Okay, what's up guys? I've had a request to go over this a little bit more in detail, and I said no problem, I'll do that. So let's do this. So I have it here, walk through it slowly. Again, if you don't understand it, send me a reminder. You can write on the Facebook, you could write on the YouTube, you can write a comment. I'll respond back as I see it, so just let me know. But the first thing we have to do whenever we get to a curve, a graph like this, we have to label it. So we always know that our price goes on the left, and we know that our quantity goes down here. If we're just doing a supply graph, then we would put an S. If we're doing just the demand, we would do D. If we're doing both, let's just keep it as Q, because we're gonna do both, okay? So then the first thing we know is the supply curve always goes up, and I'm gonna label it S. For this purpose, I'm gonna label it S1, and then I know demand always goes down and to the right, and I'm gonna label that D1. So demand goes down to the right and over, supply goes up and to the right. Cool, we have that, we have price, we have quantity, everything matches. Now what we're gonna do from here, what we worked on the worksheet, is we've gotta put market equilibrium. And again, it may be confusing, but that's that point where they intersect and that your supply and demand can work together and are matching. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my circle here because that's where they intersect. But again, I have to label everything. If I don't label, I'm not gonna be able to understand it. So I'm gonna do ME, and I'm gonna put a 1 next to it, so I always know. As I did on the notes, you can do EP, equilibrium price, if you want, you just can't do E. So I will either take ME or I'll take EP. It's up to you. I would stick with ME, but if it floats your boat, do whatever you want to, no problem in that one. So let's look at this first one. Actually, no, you know what? I should step back and make sure I explained it so you get it in that one. We understand how we got that. To take a step back to make sure we're understanding, if we want to shift things, because the quiz is going to ask you and the test is going to ask you to shift either supply, demand, or both, whatever it is. The only reason we shift, so let's go with supply. Let's do it that one here. So I got supply going up, and again, I did it out of order, like I shouldn't. I should always label first and then draw, so we're on this one. This is my supply graph. If I want to shift either left or right, there are 5 determinants that we looked at. You got to find your notes and find the 5. The only reason you wouldn't is because of price, but we're going to shift regardless, so assume we're shifting. Anytime you were to move things to the left, it would be negative. Anytime you shift to the right is a positive shift. I completely understand when people say top and down, bottom. I get it, totally. You have to get it around your mind though, that is left, that is right, regardless of what you do. And left is always negative, right is always positive. So then if we redo this, for demand, okay, horrible arrow, D1, and I'm gonna change this to D because it's a demand now. If I still wanna shift this, the same principle is applicable. I either go left or I go right. It's not top down, it's left or right. Left is always negative, right is always a positive, okay? Got that? That is a quick review of what you're gonna have to do. So think about it, if it's a positive, in the question that you read, it's a positive shift. It's a negative, it's a negative shift. Negative is left, right is positive. So let's go to this. On the worksheet, it asked one of them, it asked shift market equilibrium to a positive. What would you do? So I know it's confusing now because I have 2 lines, I don't just have 1. With 1, it's easy. 2, it gets a little more complicated. Whole point is though, if it's a positive, it means I need to go to the right. This ME has to go over this way, some way over this. So how can I do that? Let's do it first. I'm gonna use S1, I'm gonna use blue. So I'm gonna say this shifted to the right. Okay, here's S1. I'm gonna draw my line there and I'm gonna label it S2 because I already have an S1 there. And then I'm gonna have a new market equilibrium and I'm gonna label it ME2. So I hope you see how I got that there. I shifted supply over to the right, even though some of us say down. If you turned it on its axis from here to there, it would still be to the right. I got my new market equilibrium, all by shifting supply over. That's all I did. Now, I could do the opposite here. If we erase this, Because again, the more lines that you put, the more confusing it tends to get. So if I can just put least amount of lines, probably the better. So positive, I have to get this over this way. That way would be left. That's a negative shift. So what I'm going to use green this time for my demand line. I'm going to shift demand over to the right. Okay, and I'm going to draw my line with my arrow. I'm going to label D2, and I'm going to put a new dot there and label it ME2. Perfect. New market equilibrium, it's shifted positive. That's all I would do. Both of those were correct for what I was asking on the worksheet because I was looking for a positive shift market equilibrium. It went to the right on both of them. Perfect. Now let's go to a little more of the confusing stuff, the price floor, the price ceiling, all that stuff. So let me erase this real quick. Go get a cup of coffee or something. I love talking to the camera. It's so much fun. Okay, here we go. When we're always doing something, again, with supply and demand, we don't have to label it S or D. Just keep it as Q. But we have to get in the habit. If we're trying to find anything with market equilibrium, not just supply, not just demand alone, we always start with this. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to do my S1 going up, and then I'm going to do my D1 going down. My next step then, after I label and put them that way, is I'm going to draw my period here. And that is my market equilibrium. And the reason I do that again is because that's where they intersect. Perfect. We said in there that there is a thing called a shortage, which would be typically down this way. And there's a thing called a surplus, typically up there. Shortage, as we went through in the notes, is, hopefully you know, I'm reminding you now, you should look in your notes. Supply is the surplus is the opposite here. In order though to have shortage or surplus, we have to have a line because if you were to think about this, I've been doing these very small scale graphs. Realistically though, the line could go as far as the data would want. So instead of maybe it stopping at 100, I don't know, let's say it went to 2,000. It could be a big market, big graph. We've been doing it on a tiny scale. This could be big. So therefore, it would grow. In order to cap that, I have to put a minimum or a maximum price. So in this sense, for shortage, I need to put a price ceiling, which stops it. A price ceiling is just 2 points, one on the D line and one on the S line, and across. And so then I would label it PC. And what that does is that stops anything from coming down here. Perfect. So now I've identified my PC, and now stuff in here I can identify as being shortage. Okay? The same goes for up top, surplus. Again, as big as my graph could be, as the market could handle, my lines could keep going. But in order to stop it, I have to make something that puts a value on it. So I would put a dot on D, and I would put a dot on S to represent like a data point. It stops. And then I put a line across, and then I know that anything that falls in between those points in market equilibrium is now going to be my surplus. That's how I would do it. Holy crap, confusing. Definitely agree with you. But if you stop and you break it down slowly, it makes sense. This is all just conceptual based. We haven't added number values yet or put things. When you have number values, it tells you where to draw the line. Right now, it's all concepts. And in economics, especially micro, if you cannot get the concept, it's not going to make sense as much. All this is telling us supply and demand. How well it meets and how well it works. We are trying to get this always. That's our goal. To always be happy crossing each other, working well together. Sometimes it may be down here, sometimes it may cross up there. It is what it is. Obviously though, if we can keep it in the center of our graph, it's better for both parties, the consumer and the supplier. And that's what we want in economics. We want both parties to be happy. We don't want one to be higher than the other because then it's imbalanced. So this is all we're doing in economics. In this micro sense with this graphing, that's it. If you have any other questions, ask me. But again, All you're doing for the quiz is you're shifting things. That's it. I think you're reading a few scenarios like, oh, new technology came and it affected the price of milk, like we did in the worksheet. Think about it. Read it and think, okay? So for example, I'll do one last thing and then the video will be over, which breaks my heart, but that's okay. Supply one. So again, the milk one said, new technology comes out and makes milking cows automated. Awesome. And we're a supplier of milk. So what does automation in having machines do? Yeah, you have to pay for them, but let's go past the pain and assuming we have money for it. What does it do? It makes it faster, right? I can produce more. And if I produce more, typically I can make more. I probably don't have as many employees, so I don't have to pay it out as much. So this is a big thing. So then that would be a positive, right? And we know to the right is always positive. That's my shift there. So then my new curve would be that. That's it. I just went through that situation there. That's what it's asking you. So when you read things, think logically, stop, don't just write it. If you're confused, it's okay. That means you just need to reread it. Compartmentalize, break it down, and I promise you'll understand it, okay? And if you still need help, write comments in the YouTube video, come talk to me anytime or send me a reminder and we're here to help you, okay? But stay positive. Just because you may be a little nervous about it doesn't mean you can't do it. I promise you, you can. You just got to believe in yourself, all right? Have a good rest of your day.